I asked this at 8 o'clock. How many people got a little bit of the Christmas holiday hangover? Not hangover, but just the party and the celebrating and the eating and all the stuff going on. A few people? Yeah. Okay. It's all right. As we're going in, glad you're with us as we get started. We continue in this story, this Luke story. We've been talking starting last week, and if you've been with us at any time this week, we've been talking about stories. This story of Jesus in this story of the birth going in various aspects of how God has been writing this story. And this morning we're going to talk about one aspect of the story is going in, and one of the things you find right in great stories, all great stories, right, have great characters, right? You read books or movies and stuff, all great stories have great characters. One of those great characters, just to give you a couple examples, one of those great characters in an older book, right, is from Charles Dickens' the novel Oliver Twist. Right? Oliver, isn't a great character, is written? If you want something a little more on the modern side, more today in here, from the first Hunger Games. The first one, first book, right? The first book, the character Rue, the little character in the games that saves Katniss's life in here, that's a great character that's written in the story. The story is about great characters. It's about great characters and how we fit into that story going in those characters that God is using. And we're going to be in Luke chapter 2. If you want to grab a Bible, you can follow along with me. We're going to be in parts of that, part of the reading that we just had going in. But in that first part of Luke 2, we talked about, you heard during this week, is it says Mary and Joseph, it says it came up from Nazareth into Bethlehem. And it focuses them on Nazareth. One of the things helped understand about characters is where they're coming from, where they come from, and Nazareth was one of those backwater spots. Nazareth was one of those out-of-the-way places. It was not easy to get to. It was not the most convenient place. It's a small town, had one well in here. You can see how people looked at Nazareth was in John chapter 1. One of the disciples, who will be a disciple, says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" It must have been surely running in the minds as you're sitting here thinking about Mary and Joseph. Mary and Joseph coming up out of Nazareth, going in here, going in. And you have Mary coming up out of Nazareth, right? Mary, remember, as I pause here, and I need to make sure you understand, right, is Nazareth is a small town. It's still a small town. And it was even smaller in Mary and Joseph's day. Now, right? Rule number one about living in a small town is what? Everybody, right? Everybody knows everybody else's business, right? And the other rule of a small town, they have very long memories, right? And so you have Mary, who started off in here as upright, good, doing everything she expected of. She was going to marry a wonderful guy in here, have a passel of kids. It'd be a wonderful life in Nazareth going in here. And she turns up pregnant in a time when unmarried ladies didn't do that. She turns up pregnant in here, right? And it's carrying in here, right? That long memory stuff. Remember, if she's thinking about this is not a passing thing for Mary anymore. All of a sudden, Mary, for the rest of her life, it's going to be, Mary, Joseph's wife. Oh, yeah, I remember Mary going in. And you got Joseph. It says Joseph is a righteous man. What that basically means, translating, it says Joseph is a guy who did the right thing because it was the right thing. He's upright. He does the right thing. He's a respected member of his community. People look up to him. He's one of those anchors of the community. So imagine the shock and the surprise to everybody's face in here is when they find out that Joseph's going to marry Mary, right? I think one of two things is going to happen in here. The talk of the town is going to be one of two things in here. One is the best side you could say is to sit here and say, well, Joseph's crazy anyway, so it's okay. The other side of this equation, what's going to be said here, I think they would say, is they go, oh, I know why he's got to marry her. And going in, and suddenly you've got Mary and Joseph in here. This isn't a story about people who are the somebodies in here. The story focuses on Mary and Joseph. Focuses on the cast-offs in this story. Verse 25 of our text, one of the things we're talking about in verse 25 of our text, is Mary and Joseph are bringing the baby Jesus, 40-day-old baby Jesus, into the temple. As they're coming into the temple in here, that is, we'll talk about coming into the temple, this is a prescribed offering for 40 days. Simply what's going on here is that according to the laws in here, a woman and her child were considered ceremonially unclean 40 days after a birth. So they're coming in, and Mary and Joseph are bringing Jesus in here to the temple to make the required offering for that. As they're walking across there, the temple area would have been very crowded. It's not like they've been walking by themselves. There's been a lot of people around in here. And one of the people that comes up to Mary and Joseph is a guy by the name of Simeon. And in a world where connections are everything, who's your family, what's your community, how are you connected to people, how do you fit in, all we have here is a name. He's not a priest. He's not a Levite. He's not an elite. He's not any of the fancy people, the somebodies of the area. He's just a guy. Just a guy sitting in here that's going to give a message and a promise by God. And God uses him. And you've got Anna. Anna in here, depending upon how you do the counting and who you read in here, Anna is anywhere between 84 and 105. And she's a widow in a time where widows are looked down upon and widows are not respected and widows are beaten and widows are taken advantage of. And she's got a message for Mary and Joseph in here. But it's interesting as you look at this message. It's interesting as you look at this message in here, because if you back up in the Gospel of Luke just a little bit, up into chapter 2, angels come to the shepherds with a message about Jesus. And the angels have a reaction. They get up and they go to Bethlehem. And they spread the word. There's that visual action, the reaction that they have. In the very next section, if you follow down in here, is Jesus in the temple at 12. There's Jesus in the temple. It's a story about Jesus. And the reaction there, the teachers there are bewildered. Consistently in the Gospels, you find when Jesus is there, and it's a message about Jesus going in, there's usually one of three reactions. It's either acceptance, rejection, or confusion. But what you have here at this spot right now is nothing. There's no reaction. There's all these people walking around, all these people going around in here, and they're basically ignoring. We've got a story here that's transpiring that the people of the area are ignoring, not paying any attention to. Even that character that we think of, that character that we think we know when we hear about Jesus, right? Last week we sat here and we talked, and the text was about the names that Jesus is going to be given, the Holy One of God, the Son of God, all these majestic, magnificent names. And what happens in here in this first part of this ceremony, after when Jesus is 8 days old, it simply says, the rabbi would turn to Joseph and say, so what's this going to be called? And he says, Jesus. Or if you want Hebrew, you can say Yeshua. Nice, good, traditional Old Testament name. All right? Just an ordinary name. And then 40 days old, he goes to the temple in here. One of the things that we talked about, the requirement, that 40-day, that presentation in here. It's important to catch it here, and to catch the import of what's happening here is that you have here this baby, this child in here. This is the great I am. This is God made flesh. This is the one who was on Mount Sinai and handed down the 10 Commandments and the laws to Moses. Now places himself under those laws. And his earthly parents come and make a sacrifice as he places himself under those laws. Story has characters in it. And if the characters, the thing that runs through this story is all these characters are ragamuffins. These characters are simply ragamuffins. Ragamuffins are the urchins. Ragamuffins are the forgotten. Ragamuffins are the cast-offs. Ragamuffins are those whose lives are a mess, whose lives are forgotten, who are ignored by the world. In a world that's about somebodies, even this world, our world today, but that world there then, even was about somebodies. This story starts off with somebodies. It starts off with Caesar Augustus. It starts off with Quirinius, the governor of Syria. A tangential story. Herod, who's king. But this story's not about them. It's not about the somebodies. It's about the ragamuffins. It's about the ragamuffins going in here and going through the world. Ragamuffins. One of those ragamuffins in this gospel story is a lady by the name of Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, right, who goes to the tomb at Easter time. Goes to the tomb and sees the risen Jesus, and she's the first one who sees the risen Jesus and takes that message back. But if you back up in that story, you realize that Mary Magdalene was possessed by 7 demons. Mary Magdalene started this story as a ragamuffin. Where we start. You've got Mary, and you've got Joseph, and you've got Anna, and you've got Simeon, and we could go on to the shepherds, and we could go on to the innkeeper. Ragamuffins all is God using this story, using these urchins, using these cast-offs. Ragamuffins are part of this story. And that's who they are. The story is about ragamuffins. People who have no place else to turn in their lives. It's about us. We're the ragamuffins in this story as well. Whose lives are messed up, whose lives are broken, whose lives are filled with the gunk of life. People who sit in here who mess up more than we succeed. Who struggle to do the right thing, struggle to know what's going on, struggle to live this identity out. Going in here, wonder how could anybody accept me? How could anybody love me? How could anybody in here with me? Ragamuffins. St. Paul says the same thing in his letter to the Romans. He uses different words. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Basically, he's saying, yes, we're all ragamuffins. But it's precisely to the ragamuffins this story is for. It's to those people who have no place else to turn. It's Jesus who's standing there. People whose lives are messed up, and Jesus says, I'm here. People who are desperately wanting to know, am I loved? Does somebody love me? And Jesus is saying, yes, I love you. People who are desperately seeking to know, is it going to be okay? Is God going to be there in the stuff I'm going through in life? And Jesus says, yes, I'll be there. It's people whose lives are fouled up and they can't see any way out. And it's Jesus sitting there saying, take my hand. Follow me. May not be easy, but follow me. It's people who are dealing with the stuff of life and dealing with the things going on in the world. The story is for ragamuffins. We're the ragamuffins who's sitting here, and God says, with all this stuff going on, you need to understand, you need to remember one thing. I love you. I've always loved you. And I always will love you. The story is about ragamuffins. The story is about God using ragamuffins. God using ragamuffins then, God using ragamuffins now. Because God still uses ragamuffins. He uses those ragamuffins, and he sends us out as ragamuffins out into the world to love ragamuffins. To go out into the world without an agenda, without a goal, without a plan, without all these things going on and stuff going in. He says with one simple thing, go out and love. Go out and love people. He sits there and says another place, basically he says, anybody can love the easy people in life, right? In everybody's life, there's people who are just the easy people to love. They're easy people to like. Everybody likes them. Everybody enjoys them, right? They just get along. They're great, right? Everybody's got those. With me? He sends us out. He says, that's okay, love them. But what I'm sending you to do is I'm sending you to love the hard people. Because if you got the people in your life, you says they're wonderful and easy. I know you got the people in your life you want to pull your hair out. That drive you crazy. People filled with the hate. People filled with the anger. People filled with the rage. People filled with the abuse. People filled with the gunk. And God sends us out to love those people. Ragamuffins love ragamuffins. And that's what God sends us to do. That's what the Apostle John writes basically in his epistle lesson when he sits there and he says, as God has loved us, go also love one another. Is to go out and love those ragamuffins, those people who are hard in life to love. Ragamuffins love ragamuffins. And God uses ragamuffins. That's what this story's about in here with Mary and Joseph. And that's what this story is about today with you and me. God uses ragamuffins. Bow your heads with me as we pray. Father in heaven, I know my life is messed up. I know my life was full of gunk. But I know you love me anyway, and you love us anyway. So use us. Use us to love others. Use us to find those ragamuffins in life. Use us to love those hard people to love in the world. Use us to fill them with love. That we're your ragamuffins. That you've loved us to go out and love the others. Amen.